So today we got some new information on how you can go about obtaining some of the most rare, unique items in Diablo 4 by one of the Diablo 4 developers. And this comes from Adam Jackson, who is the lead class designer of Diablo 4. And the post reads, "Hello, I want to clear up some details on the rarest unique items in Diablo 4. They can drop from enemies that are level 85 plus. You can get them anywhere you could get a regular unique, and they always drop at 820 item power. There are currently 6 of them in the game, and they are very, very rare." And some additional information he posted is whenever you get a unique item, there's a chance for that unique to instead be one of these ultra rare uniques. Therefore, the best way to farm these is to do content that gives you the most opportunities at unique items. And that would be with the caveat that the enemies you're killing would have to be level 85 plus. And these things are so rare that only a handful of people have posted proof that they've actually obtained one of these. So these things are just stupidly rare right now. But at the end of the video, I want to go over what is seeming to be the best way to go about farming to attempt to get one of these. And these 6 uniques are all generic use, so all classes can use them, and they're all so strong that basically every build could make use of all of these uniques. And the first one being Andariel's Visage, with the special effect of a lucky hit, up to a 20% chance to trigger a poison nova that can apply a massive poisoning damage over time for 5 seconds to all enemies in an area. And from the database information, this poison effect can go up to 20,000 over that 5 seconds. And keep in mind, that's a base roll of 20,000 with no additions or multipliers yet. So just the poisoning damage from this helmet could easily be doing millions of damage over that 5 seconds. And this helmet is also one of the most unique items in the game because it's the only item in the game with a percentage lifesteal roll. So it can roll up to 2% lifesteal. And since nobody's posted about obtaining one of these yet, we don't even know how lifesteal actually works. We don't know if it's like a heal over time. We don't know if it heals you in chunks or if it has some internal cap, because if it's just up to 2% lifesteal, you basically would not be able to die unless you get one shot or CC'd then killed, just based on how much damage you can do and how much health you'll have. Then second, we have a Doombringer. This is one of the weapons that's actually been posted about being obtained, and the special of this is another lucky hit chance, up to a 25% chance to deal a big chunk of shadow damage to surrounding enemies and reduce their damage done by 20% for 5 seconds. And this is a one-handed sword. And again, this damage proc is up to almost 12,000 damage at a base roll, and it's shadow damage, so something like a rogue has a bunch of potential scaling with that, and then reduces damage dealt by all those enemies by 20% is also pretty massive. And the rolls on this weapon are also ridiculous. It has almost up to a 20% core skill damage roll, up to a 17.5% just damage roll, which is crazy. Lucky hit with a chance to heal you isn't very good. It has up to a 26% maximum life roll. Absolutely bonkers. You'll notice with some of these uniques, they can roll just ridiculous amounts of increased health. Then we have probably the most known item, which has also been posted about being obtained, the Harlequin Crest, also known as the Shaco. And the special of this is you gain 10 to 20% damage reduction, which is massive in itself. You also gain +4 ranks to all skills. So this is literally every single skill in your skill tree gains +4 ranks. Absolutely ridiculous for any build. No matter what build you're using, unless your helmet is a requirement for that build to work, this helmet can be used in your build. Then the rolls on it are also pretty crazy. It can roll up to 2,700 maximum life, massive, especially for lower health builds. This is better than a really high percent roll. We have cooldown reduction, resource generation, and then an all stats roll. And just the amount of pure power you get from this item is absolutely crazy. Then next up, we have the Melted Heart of Selig, which I feel like a lot of people don't know about because the special of this is kind of crazy, especially in certain builds. You gain 30% to your maximum resource. In addition, when you take damage, you drain 3 to 6 of your resource for every 1% of life you would have lost instead. If you have a lot of resource built up, you just won't be taking damage. It'll just use up all your resource instead of your health. And something like the last build I went over, which is a Claw Druid build, you literally don't use your spirit, but you generate ungodly amounts of spirit. So if you could get this for specifically a Claw Druid build, you'd probably become close to unkillable. It would be completely ridiculous. And the rolls are kind of basic: all stat roll, core skill damage roll, damage while healthy roll, and resource generation. All kind of basic, but the special is incredibly interesting for certain builds. Then we have Ring of Starless Skies, probably the one the least people have heard about. Its special is each consecutive core skill cast reduces the resource cost of your core skill by 8 to 12% up to a maximum of 40%. And I don't know exactly how this is going to work because it says each consecutive. I'm assuming this means that this will reset if you use any other ability that's not a core skill. So this could potentially allow you to use a core skill and then like go back to town, come back, and you would still have the buff until you use a non-core skill ability. But depending on what build it is, if it's built around having ways to give you resources back without using other abilities, this could potentially be really strong. Even something specifically like a Whirlwind Barbarian, where you're also gaining resources just from using Whirlwind, this thing could potentially allow you to not have to use a basic skill anymore. And the rolls on it are actually really good for a ring. Lucky hit chance, critical strike damage and critical strike chance, and core skill damage. So the rolls on this thing are also basically perfectly rolled for a lot of builds, and then the special effect is just really strong as well. Then finally, we have probably the most ridiculous item in the entirety of the game, the Grandfather. And the special effect on this is increase your critical strike damage by 60 to 100%, and then the other properties on this weapon can roll higher than normal. And that may sound really basic and not that strong, until you realize the critical strike damage roll on this is multiplicative instead of additive. And that's shown by the little X next to it. So let's say you get this weapon with 100% roll on it. If you have 500% critical strike damage and you get this weapon with a max roll on it and equip it, you will now have 1000% critical strike damage because this is multiplicative. Just off that special stat alone, this thing is ungodly, but then it can roll up to 56% increased damage. So just percentage increased damage. It can roll up to 5500 max health, and then it can roll up to 72 all stats. It also ignores all durability loss, but that's just kind of a flavor thing because this weapon is from other Diablo games and they also had that effect. And this is a two-handed sword, so it also rolls some additional critical strike damage. Any build that can make use of a two-handed sword would use this sword. Like imagine just getting 56% increased damage and 5500 health, not even adding in the high all stat roll and the massive critical strike damage multiplier. And any build that gets this, especially a barbarian, is legitimately gonna be getting the highest power boost they have obtained in the game up to that point. Nothing even comes close. So now you're probably wondering, well, how do I go about farming one of these? And like I mentioned, only a handful of these have actually been proven to be dropped and obtained by players, but with some of that information from the developer, it seems we know what's probably going to be the best way to go about farming these. Because all you need to do is to be killing enemies that are level 85 plus, and then farming in the ways that's going to give you the highest chance to get uniques. Because if you're killing level 85 plus enemies and a unique drops, there's a chance that that unique could be one of these uniques. And I think the absolute best way to go about farming this is going to be doing the fastest nightmare dungeons you can do. And the most optimal way to do this within those nightmare dungeons is to do the lowest tier nightmare dungeon you can do that causes the enemies to be level 85. So if you're 85 or above, any nightmare dungeon is going to be able to drop these. So you could potentially do the lowest tier of key at that level and still get these. And it's seeming like you'll still have the same exact chance to get these as you would from doing like the highest tier of nightmare dungeon. And I think the most optimal way to actually do the runs would just be to run through the dungeon, stop to kill any elites, and just try to complete that dungeon as quickly as possible. Because once you complete a nightmare dungeon and get the reward at the end, the bubble pops up, one of those rewards is guaranteed to at least be a legendary item. And what this seems to also mean is that it'll have a higher chance than normal to give you a unique item. Because I've gotten a lot of my uniques for the multiple builds I've gone over from that end of nightmare dungeon reward, because it seems to have a higher chance to give uniques than just killing elites or killing bosses. So if you can do nightmare dungeons very quickly, only stopping to kill elites because they're going to have a much higher chance to drop items, meaning they're going to also have a much higher chance to drop uniques, then completing it as quickly as possible, this will give you the most possible uniques per time. And besides that, you're basically at the whim of RNG. And with how rare these things actually seem to be, I would not be surprised if they get a drop rate boost. In fact, I would not be surprised if that's one of the things that will be in Season 1. Either they increase the drop rate of these across the entirety of the game, or they announce that in seasons you're going to have a higher chance to get these or other uniques because seasons are obviously timed. But that's pretty much all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.